everyone, and welcome to A Story of Light, a musical journey in 19 days. And it's day 18. And today I have a small announcement to make because, this whole project is a big learning experience for me. And I know that this was intended to be a musical journey in 19 days. But in order to finish the story, I'm going to need to add one extra day to bring our story to a close. So tomorrow will actually not be the final episode, but the day after tomorrow will be the final episode. And that is actually, of course, the 20th is the Baha'i New Year. It's Nowruz, and I thought, well, maybe it would be a good day to do one final episode and bring our story to a close as we begin the new year. So this is not in 19 days plus 1 day. So that's today's announcement. So looking back over the past few episodes, Abdu'l-Bahá had now received the first groups of Western pilgrims, of the first Western Baha'is who had come from places like America and Europe, from as far away as California. They had come all the way to Akka to meet him. He had planted the seeds of his father's teachings in far-off lands. He had overcome his brother's attempts to destroy him. And he had accomplished one of the most momentous, strenuous, and astoundingly difficult acts of his life. He had safely transferred the sacred remains of the Bab, hidden for 60 years, all the way from Persia to the Holy Land. And he had laid those remains to rest on Mount Carmel in the very spot his father had chosen. But now, at 67 years of age, Abdu'l-Bahá was about to embark on the most monumental enterprise of his entire life. So several years earlier, when he was still a prisoner, Abdu'l-Bahá had written to some of those Baha'is in the West, and he had said to them the following. So Antimo, if you can put up the first slide there. He had said to them, "Oh, that I could travel, even though on foot and in the utmost poverty, to these regions, and raising the call of Ya Baha'u'llah in cities, villages, mountains, deserts, and oceans, promote the divine teachings. This, alas, I cannot do. How intensely I deplore it." Well, with circumstances now so vastly changed, Abdu'l-Bahá was free. He was no longer a prisoner of the Ottomans. And so, at almost 70 years of age, having spent his entire life in prison and in exile, Abdu'l-Bahá set out on a journey to bring his father's message, this message which the kings and rulers of the world had either ignored or had actively suppressed. He set out to bring this message to the people of the world directly. And so, for a period of 3 years, from 1911 to 1913, Abdu'l-Bahá embarked on what Shoghi Effendi has referred to as epoch-making travels. He set out from the Holy Land, sailing first to Egypt and from there to Europe. He travelled through France and Germany and Italy and Switzerland and England and Scotland. He travelled across the Atlantic all the way to the US and Canada, travelling from New York to California and back again. And having never given a public talk in his entire life, Abdu'l-Bahá travelled from place to place, giving hundreds and hundreds of talks in all sorts of places, in schools and universities, in Christian churches and Jewish synagogues and philosophical societies, in public libraries and private homes, speaking about the teachings of his father. He spoke about the oneness of humanity and the unity of the world's religions, and the equality of men and women, and the need for harmony between science and religion. He spoke about Baha'u'llah's call to the world leaders, this great call to establish the most great peace. He spoke about how wherever Baha'u'llah went, he had taught people how to love one another, no matter how different they were. And he also spoke about the great difficulties that the family had faced, the periods of exile in Baghdad and Constantinople and Adrianople, about the family's imprisonment in Akka, and of all the years of persecution, all the way back to the time of the Bab, way back in Persia in 1844. Day after day, Abdu'l-Bahá travelled like a comet across the Western world, giving talk after talk after talk. But what left the greatest impression on the people of the West was not so much Abdu'l-Bahā's talks as Abdu'l-Bahá himself. And when people were asked about their encounters with him, people often struggled to describe it. One person once said that he was the most perfect gentleman I have ever known. Others spoke about him in terms of his qualities, his wisdom, his humility, his seemingly infinite supply of loving kindness for everyone who crossed his path. But for the most part, people were simply lost for words. And sometimes the most they could say was, "You should have seen him. You should have seen him." And so today, I can't really do much better than to share with you one particularly touching memory of a man who did see him and who was lucky enough to spend some extended time with Abdu'l-Bahá during his travels in America. So this comes from a book called Portals to Freedom by Howard Colby Ives. Howard Colby Ives was a Unitarian minister who had become very curious to learn more about Abdu'l-Bahā's upcoming visit to New York City. And he showed up at a meeting hoping that he could somehow, some way, get an interview with Abdu'l-Bahá. And this is his account of the first time he met him. I remember as if it were yesterday the scene and my impressions. I did not want to talk to anyone. In fact, I would not. I withdrew to the window overlooking Broadway and turned my back upon them all. Below me stretched the great city, but I saw it not. What was it all about? Why was I here? What did I expect from the coming interview? Indeed, how did I know there was to be any interview at all? I had no appointment. Plainly, all these other folk had come expecting to see and talk with him. Why should I expect any attention from such an evident personage? So I was somewhat withdrawn from the others when my attention was attracted by a rustling throughout the room. A door was opening far across from me, and a group was emerging, and Abdu'l-Bahá appeared saying farewell. None had any eyes save for him. Again I had the impression of a unique dignity and courtesy and love. The morning sunlight flooded the room to centre on his robe. His fez was slightly tilted, and as I gazed, his hand, with a gesture evidently characteristic, raised and touching it, restored it to its proper place. His eyes met mine as my fascinated glance was on him. He smiled, and with a gesture which no word but lordly can describe, he beckoned me. Startled gives no hint of my sensations. Something incredible had happened. Why, to me, a stranger unknown, unheard of, should he raise that friendly hand? I glanced around. Surely it was to someone else that gesture was addressed. Those eyes were smiling. But there was no one near, and again I looked, and again he beckoned, and such understanding love enveloped me that even at that distance, and with a heart still cold, a thrill ran through me as if a breeze from a divine morning had touched my brow. Slowly I obeyed that imperative command, and as I approached the door where still he stood, he motioned others away and stretched his hand to me as if he had always known me. And as our right hands met, with his left he indicated that all should leave the room, and he drew me in and closed the door. I remember how surprised the interpreter looked when he too was included in this general dismissal, but I had little thought then for anything but this incredible happening. I was absolutely alone with Abdu'l-Bahá. The halting desire expressed weeks ago was fulfilled the very moment that our eyes first met. Still holding my hand, Abdu'l-Bahá walked across the room towards where in the window 2 chairs were waiting. Even then, the majesty of his tread impressed me, and I felt like a child led by his father, a more than earthly father, to a comforting conference. His hand still held mine, and frequently his grasp tightened and held more closely, and then, for the first time, he spoke, and in my own tongue. Softly came the assurance that I was his very dear son. What there was in these simple words that carried such conviction to my heart, I cannot say. Or was it the tone of voice and the atmosphere pervading the room, filled with spiritual vibrations beyond anything I had ever known, that melted my heart almost to tears? I only know that a sense of verity invaded me. Here at last was my father. What earthly paternal relationship could equal this? A new and exquisite emotion all but mastered me. My throat swelled, my eyes filled. I could not have spoken had life depended on a word. I followed those masterly feet like a little child. Then we sat in the 2 chairs by the window, knee to knee, eye to eye. At last he looked right into me. It was the first time since our eyes had met with his first beckoning gesture that this had happened. And now nothing intervened between us, and he looked at me. He looked at me. It seemed as though never before had anyone really seen me. I felt a sense of gladness that I at last was at home, and that one who knew me utterly, my father in truth, was alone with me. As he looked, such play of thought found reflection in his face, that if he had talked an hour, not nearly so much could have been said. A little surprise, perhaps, followed swiftly by such sympathy, such understanding, such overwhelming love. It was as if his very being opened to receive me. With that, the heart within me melted, and the tears flowed. I did not weep in any ordinary sense. There was no breaking up of feature. It was as if a long-pent stream was at last undammed. Unheeded, as I looked at him, they flowed. He put his 2 thumbs to my eyes, while he wiped the tears from my face, admonishing me not to cry, that one must always be happy. And he laughed, such a ringing, boyish laugh. It was as though he had discovered the most delightful joke imaginable, a divine joke, which only he could appreciate. I could not speak. We both sat perfectly silent for what seemed a long while, and gradually a great peace came to me. Then Abdu'l-Bahá placed his hand upon my breast, saying that it was the heart that speaks. Again silence, a long, heart-enthralling silence. No word further was spoken, and all the time I was with him, not one single sound came from me. But no word was necessary from me to him. I knew that even then, and how I thanked God it was so. Suddenly, he leaped from his chair with another laugh, as though consumed with a heavenly joy. Turning, he took me under the elbows and lifted me to my feet and swept me into his arms. Such a hug, no mere embrace. My very ribs cracked. He kissed me on both cheeks, laid his arm across my shoulder. Life has never been quite the same since. So today I would like to sing for you a prayer of Abdu'l-Bahá about being happy. This is called Refresh and Gladden My Spirit. O God, refresh and gladden my spirit. Purify my heart, illumine my powers. I lay all my affairs in thy hand, in thy hand, in thy hand. Thou art my guide and my refuge. I will no longer be sorrowful and grieved. I will be a happy and joyful being. Oh God, refresh and gladden my spirit, my spirit. Purify my heart, illumine my powers. I will no longer be full of anxiety. No, 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 no will I let trouble harass me. I will not dwell on the unpleasant things of life. Oh God, oh God, oh God. Thou art more friend to me than I am to myself, to myself. Thou art more friend to me than I am to myself, to myself. Well, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself, to myself. Well, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself, to myself. Oh Lord.